800 plus vanished on the Oregon Trail, America's most haunted hike. Over 20,000 pioneers died on the 2,000-mile journey along the Oregon Trail, their graves marking the path to the west. But what about the hundreds who simply vanished without a trace? Their stories aren't just a thing of the past. Today, hikers still disappear along this haunted route, and the spirits of the lost are said to linger. In this video, we're exploring the most haunted locations along America's deadliest trail, where the ghosts of the past might still be claiming victims. This isn't just a collection of ghost stories. It's a journey into a dark chapter of American history that has never fully closed. A chapter where the lines between tragic history, unsolved mystery, and the supernatural are hopelessly blurred. The land remembers. And along the roughly 2,000 miles of the Oregon Trail, that memory is soaked in blood, sorrow, and the enduring question of those who were there one moment and gone the next. We'll investigate the historical accounts, the modern-day cases, and the paranormal legends that have turned this historic route into what some call America's most haunted hike. Get ready, because we're about to step onto a path where the past is never truly buried. Section 1. The nation's longest graveyard. To understand the hauntings, you first have to understand the sheer scale of death that defines the Oregon Trail. Between the 1840s and the 1860s, a flood of humanity poured westward. Somewhere between 300,000 and 400,000 souls, dreaming of free land in Oregon's Willamette Valley, packed their lives into covered wagons and set out from places like Missouri. They were families, farmers, dreamers. They were also, in many ways, marching toward their own doom. The journey was meant to take 4 to 6 months, a grueling test of endurance against a backdrop of stunning but unforgiving landscapes. That romantic picture you might have in your head, of pioneers gathered around a campfire singing songs of hope, that's a thin veneer over a much darker reality. The trail was, in truth, the nation's longest graveyard. Conservative estimates suggest at least 20,000 people died along the way. That's an average of 10 graves for every single mile. Some historians believe the number could be as high as 30,000, which is closer to 15 graves a mile. Imagine walking for half a year, and every 80 yards, you pass another makeshift grave, a stark reminder of your own mortality. And these weren't dramatic deaths from shootouts, like Hollywood would have us believe. The most prolific killer on the trail was invisible, silent, and swift: disease. Asiatic cholera was the great terror of the plains. It spread through contaminated water at crowded campsites and could kill a healthy person in a matter of hours, leaving their family to hastily bury them in a shallow grave before being forced to move on. Dysentery, smallpox, and typhoid fever were also rampant. Accidents were the second leading cause of death. Drownings during treacherous river crossings were common. Accidental shootings, often by children playing with carelessly stored firearms, were tragically frequent. And then there were the wagons themselves. Many people, especially kids, were crushed to death under the heavy wheels after falling from the moving vehicles. But beyond the recorded deaths lies a deeper mystery: the vanished. In the chaos of a massive wagon train, which could stretch for miles, people sometimes just disappeared. A child wandering off to pick flowers, a man scouting ahead for water, never seen again. Records from the era are notoriously incomplete, but folklorists and researchers, piecing together journal entries and historical gaps, have suggested the number of the vanished could be as high as 800 people or more. They weren't recorded as dead because no body was ever found. They were simply gone, swallowed by the vast, indifferent wilderness. What happened to them? Were they victims of predators? Did they succumb to the elements? Or did something stranger claim them? This is the foundational horror of the Oregon Trail. It's not just the staggering number of deaths, but the profound mystery of those who were erased. This legacy of sorrow, of violent endings and unanswered loss, has seeped into the very soil, creating a psychic wound on the landscape. And our first stop is one such place, a landmark that offered pioneers a glimmer of hope, but is now known for something much, much darker. Section 2. Malheur Butte, the Cursed Landmark. In the desolate plains of eastern Oregon, a solitary, ominous landform breaks the horizon. It's an extinct volcano, dark and jagged, known as Malheur Butte. For the exhausted pioneers, this butte was a significant landmark. It signaled they were nearing the end of the treacherous Snake River Plain. It was a sign of progress, a waypoint on their map to a new life. But the history of this place is far older and more sinister than the trail itself. Long before the wagons arrived, the butte was steeped in dark local legends, with some lore speaking of it as a place of powerful spirits, a place to be avoided after nightfall. As settlers began to populate the area, these stories grew. A new legend took hold, whispered around campfires, that Malheur Butte became a secret meeting place for witches who gathered on its craggy slopes to perform dark rituals. While it's easy to dismiss this as folklore, the persistent paranormal accounts that plague this location suggest something profoundly unsettling is at work. Modern visitors, from hikers to paranormal investigators, report a consistent and terrifying phenomenon. After dark, they say, small, shadowy creatures emerge. They're often described as being about the size of a small dog, with long, skinny limbs and oversized heads. Witnesses report seeing them darting between the rocks with an unnatural, skittering speed. Their eyes are sometimes described as dark, empty pits. These encounters are almost always paired with an overwhelming sense of dread, the feeling of being hunted by malevolent eyes. The creatures are said to chase people away from the butte, sometimes making strange, guttural noises that are neither animal nor human. One harrowing account online details a driver near the butte seeing a black, creature-like thing with a big head and no eyes appear in the road before darting away with incredible speed. Some paranormal theories connect these creatures to the legends of witchcraft, suggesting they are demonic imps. Others believe they are something more ancient, elemental spirits of the land disturbed by the passage of so many thousands of suffering pioneers. Geothermal activity is still present under the butte, fueling nearby hot springs, and some have speculated this energy, combined with the immense emotional residue of the trail, has created a paranormal hotspot. Campers have reported inhuman growls outside their tents, and, in some terrifying cases, tents being physically dragged across the ground with people still inside. Malheur Butte reminds us that the trail didn't just cut across the land, it scarred it. And in places like this, the scars are still open. Section 3. The Ghostly Visitor of the Plains. While many hauntings along the Oregon Trail are tied to specific locations, some are as transient as the pioneers themselves, ghosts of the trail, not of a place. One of the most chilling of these stories comes from a man named Charles Dawson, in an account from 1912. He was recounting the stories of his family, who had settled along the Little Blue River in Nebraska, right beside the main route of the Oregon Trail. His story gives a voice to one of the trail's many anonymous victims. Dawson's family lived in a simple log cabin, a lonely outpost in the vast wilderness. The trail was their closest neighbor. They were used to the sounds of the trail, wagon wheels, teamsters, oxen. But one night, a new sound pierced the darkness. Dawson described it as a wailing, agonizing and pitiful cry of a woman in distress. It was a sound of pure terror, and it seemed to come from the trail. Thinking someone was in trouble, Dawson's father grabbed his rifle and went to investigate. He searched the tall cornfields and the thick brush along the riverbank, following the horrifying sounds. But the voice was elusive. It would seem to come from one direction, and when he'd get there, it would sound from another. Finally, the wailing seemed to be coming from his own cabin. He rushed back, only to find his family had fled inside and barred the door in fear. The voice eventually faded into the night. The wailing returned, night after night, always at the same time. It became a dreadful routine. The mystery deepened when they learned what had happened on that stretch of trail just a few years earlier. A small wagon team had passed through, a man, his wife, and the man's brother. The woman was known to have a considerable amount of money with her. One night, a terrible argument broke out between the two brothers, ending in murder. The husband killed his brother, and then, to take his wife's money and silence her as a witness, he murdered her, too. He buried their bodies in a shallow grave right beside the trail and continued west, a free man. The connection was immediate and terrifying. The Dawsons believed the nightly wailing was the ghost of this murdered woman, her spirit bound to the place of her violent death. Her story was one of thousands of forgotten tragedies, a brief, brutal act of violence that would have been lost to history if not for the spectral echo it left behind. Her agonizing cries, echoing across the plains years after her death, represent the collective trauma of the trail. Section 4. The Lingering Spirits of Wolf Creek Inn. As pioneers finally crossed into Oregon, their destination felt tantalizingly close. To serve these weary travelers, a network of roadhouses and inns sprang up. None is more famous or more haunted than the Wolf Creek Inn. Built in 1883, it's one of the oldest continuously operating inns in the Pacific Northwest. For a pioneer who had just spent months on the trail, the Wolf Creek Inn was a bastion of civilization. But over its long history, the inn has collected more than just weary travelers. It has collected ghosts. The paranormal experiences here are so numerous that reports date back over a century, with mediums visiting as early as 1918 and concluding that something really heavy was happening within its walls. Perhaps the most famous ghostly resident is the author Jack London. In 1913, he stayed at the inn while finishing his novel Valley of the Moon. It's said that London loved the place so much, he never truly left. Guests staying in his old room have reported seeing his apparition, a solid-looking figure who gazes out the window before vanishing. His disembodied voice has also been heard, a gruff murmur in the otherwise silent room. But London is far from alone. The sound of a phantom piano is often heard playing in the downstairs restaurant late at night, only to stop the moment someone checks on it. In the old ballroom, people hear the disembodied sounds of children running, laughing, and kicking a ball. Then there's the local legend of a terrifying, vampire-like creature lurking in the woods surrounding the inn, a monstrous figure with fangs that seems to watch guests come and go. Some believe the other spirits of the inn actually work to keep this presence at bay. And in one of the strangest recurring phenomena, multiple guests have reported the distinct feeling of their toes being playfully wiggled in the middle of the night by an unseen force. Cooking pans have been known to fly across the kitchen, and disembodied voices are so common that investigators have captured numerous EVPs. During one investigation, a clear voice was captured saying, "Don't leave," a chilling plea from a long-term resident. The Wolf Creek Inn is a place where the past doesn't just linger. It checks in and refuses to leave. We're about to shift from the historical trail to the modern era, where the disappearances have become even more mysterious. The stories get darker from here. If you're finding this investigation compelling, please take a second to hit that like button and subscribe. It lets me know you want more deep dives like this, and it genuinely helps us grow. Thank you for your support. Now, let's get back to the trail, because the ghosts of the past may still be claiming victims today. Section 5. The Modern Vanishings, a New Generation of Lost Souls. The era of the covered wagon is long gone. The Oregon Trail as a single route exists now only in history books and in preserved ruts carved into the earth. But the land it crossed, the vast, rugged wilderness of Oregon, remains as wild as ever. And the trail's sinister legacy of vanishing people has not faded. It has adapted. Today, the lost souls are not pioneers, but hikers, photographers, and adventurers. They are drawn to the same stunning landscapes, from the dense forests of Mount Hood to the dramatic cliffs of the Columbia River Gorge. But the beauty of these places hides a terrifying truth. People are still vanishing here with alarming frequency. Hundreds of people have gone missing in Oregon's woods over the past few decades, their cases remaining cold. The state's official missing persons database lists a staggering number of open cases in these wild places. These are not just statistics. They are families left in limbo, search teams baffled, and communities haunted by unanswered questions. The areas where these disappearances occur are often the same lands the Oregon Trail passed through or near. Mount Hood National Forest, the Columbia River Gorge, and the Wallowa-Whitman National Forest are all hotspots for both historical trail routes and modern missing person cases. It's as if the strange, predatory energy that once plagued the wagon trains now stalks the hiking trails. Sure, there are logical explanations. The weather in Oregon's mountains can turn in an instant. The terrain is a labyrinth of canyons and cliffs where a simple wrong turn can be a fatal mistake. Search areas are so vast they can swallow a person whole. But for many of these cases, the logical explanations feel thin. We're not just talking about inexperienced hikers. We're talking about seasoned outdoorsmen who vanish from well-marked trails. We're talking about campsites found perfectly intact, gear, food, and ID left behind, as if the person simply evaporated into thin air. So what's going on here? Is it just the unforgiving nature of the wilderness? Or is something more at play? Has the immense suffering from the pioneer era left a permanent stain on this land? Are the same unseen things whispered about in pioneer journals still at work today? The stories of the modern vanished suggest that whatever lurks in these woods is far from finished. Section 6. The Case of Wayne Wickle, Vanished in Mount Hood National Forest. The disappearance of Wayne Wickle is a textbook example of a modern vanishing that defies easy explanation. It highlights a terrifying pattern. The more experienced the hiker, the more baffling their disappearance becomes. This was not a novice who wandered off a path. This was a man who knew the woods, yet the woods took him. In 2022, Wayne Wickle, an avid and experienced outdoorsman, set off for a multi-day trek into Mount Hood National Forest. This was his element. He was familiar with the area and properly equipped. When he failed to check in as scheduled, the alarm was raised. Search and rescue teams mobilized quickly. They found his truck parked at the trailhead. And that's where the trail of clues ends. They scoured the trails, the campsites, and the rugged backcountry. They used ground teams, dogs, and helicopters. They found nothing. No dropped gear. No makeshift shelter. No tracks leading off the trail. No sign of a struggle or an accident. It was as if Wayne Wickle, a 6-foot-tall man with a heavy pack and years of experience, had walked past the trailhead and simply ceased to exist. The official search was eventually suspended. How does a man so at home in the wilderness disappear so completely? An animal attack would have left evidence. A fall would likely have left some trace. If he'd gotten lost, his experience suggests he would have stayed put and tried to signal for help. But there was only silence. This is where darker possibilities begin to creep in. Mount Hood National Forest is not just any wilderness. Parts of the historic Barlow Road, a treacherous final detour of the Oregon Trail, cut right through this forest. The pioneers who traversed this section were at their most desperate and vulnerable. Many died here, their graves lost among the ancient trees. Is it possible that the forest retains a memory of that suffering? Paranormal researchers and local legends speak of a strange, heavy energy in these woods. In the vacuum of evidence in Wayne Wickle's case, speculation is all that's left. His disappearance serves as a chilling modern postscript to the trail's dark history. Section 7. The Unsolved Disappearance of Daming Sioux. The case of Daming Sioux is one of the most perplexing in the modern annals of Oregon's vanished. He was a 63-year-old mathematics professor at the University of Oregon, a man of logic. He and his wife were avid, well-prepared hikers. On November 4, 2007, on a clear autumn day, Professor Sioux drove to the Three Sisters Wilderness for a day hike up Olalley Mountain, a place he knew. Inexplicably, he left his heavier coat and his cell phone behind in his car. He never came home. What makes this case so baffling is that we have eyewitnesses. A couple hiking the same trail, Stephanie and Paul Niedermeyer, ran into Professor Sioux at the summit around 1:30 p.m. Their account is crucial and deeply strange. They said he seemed to be in an incredible hurry. He spent only a few moments at the peak before turning around and practically running back down the mountain. The couple was struck by his haste. When the Niedermeyers later got back to the parking lot, they saw his car was still there. They were surprised, because given his speed, he should have been back long before them. When Professor Sioux was reported missing, an intensive search began. Why the hurry? What was he rushing away from? Or what was he rushing towards? 11 days later, the only significant clue was found, the other half of a hiking book he owned, which included the map for the very trail he was on. The first half was in his car. The discovery confirmed his general location, but gave no answers. The area was searched extensively. Sniffer dogs reportedly followed a track, but then inexplicably lost the scent, as if he had just vanished from that spot. The weather soon turned, erasing any potential tracks. Over the years, subsequent searches have turned up nothing. No remains, no clothing, no gear. The Three Sisters Wilderness is another area steeped in the history of the Oregon Trail. The image of a man, at the peak of a mountain, suddenly overcome with a desperate need to flee, is profoundly disturbing. Did he see something at the summit that terrified him? His story joins the chilling chorus of the vanished, a modern voice in the long, silent scream that emanates from the haunted trails of Oregon. Section 8. Echoes of Tragedy, Cathedral Park and Lithia Park. The dark energy of the Oregon Trail isn't confined to the wilderness. Its legacy of tragedy seems to have bled into the very settlements the pioneers were striving to reach. Two of Oregon's most famously haunted public parks, Cathedral Park in Portland and Lithia Park in Ashland, are modern spaces saturated with this same tragic history. First, Cathedral Park in North Portland, a beautiful green space that sits in the shadow of the magnificent St. John's Bridge. But the park's idyllic setting masks a dark secret. On the morning of August 5, 1949, a 15-year-old girl named Thelma Taylor was waiting in the park for a work bus. She was approached by an ex-convict who lured her away to the banks of the Willamette River. When she screamed for help, he brutally murdered her. Her killer was arrested and eventually executed. But Thelma's story didn't end there. Her spirit, it said, never left the park. To this day, People report hearing the ghostly, terrified screams of a young woman echoing through the park on warm summer nights. Police have allegedly been called to investigate the sounds, only to find nothing. Thelma's ghostly screams are an echo of the trail's pain. Further south, in the town of Ashland, lies another haunted space, Lithia Park. This 93-acre park is the crown jewel of the city, but beneath the beauty lies a legacy of tragedy. The park is said to be home to multiple spirits. One of the most persistent legends is of a young girl murdered there in the 1800s. Her spirit is said to manifest as a mysterious, flickering blue light seen hovering over the duck pond. But she's not alone. The park is also said to be haunted by the ghost of a train robber who was cornered by a posse and drowned in one of the park's creeks. Visitors have claimed to see the dripping apparition of the robber wandering the serene pathways at night. Together, these parks serve as urban epicenters for the same phenomena that haunt the remote trails. They show that the journey's end did not mean an end to suffering. The violence that characterized the trail found a home in the new settlements, creating new generations of ghosts. We've traveled from the desolate plains of Nebraska to the crowded parks of Portland, following a trail of sorrow that stretches across a continent and a century. The story of the Oregon Trail is more than just history. It's a catalog of human suffering on an almost unimaginable scale. The 20,000 recorded deaths are staggering, but it's the mystery of the estimated 800 or more who vanished that truly defines the trail's haunted legacy. We've explored Malheur Butte, where shadowy creatures guard ancient secrets. We've heard the spectral wails of a murdered pioneer woman. We've walked the haunted halls of the Wolf Creek Inn, and we've seen how this dark legacy continues. The same wilderness that swallowed pioneers now claims modern hikers like Wayne Wickel and Daming Sue, whose disappearances defy rational explanation. The haunted energy has even seeped into the cities, where the ghosts of murder victims cry out in public parks. This forces us to ask some unsettling questions. Are these modern disappearances just tragic accidents? Or is there a darker energy at play? Are the spirits of the lost pioneers still wandering these woods? The lines between history, mystery, and the paranormal here are completely erased. The land itself feels like a character in this story, a vast, beautiful, and predatory entity that remembers every tragedy and keeps its secrets well. The Oregon Trail may be a ghost of its former self, but its ghosts are very much alive. What do you think happened to the hundreds who vanished? Do you believe these modern cases are connected to the trail's dark history, or are they just tragic coincidences? Let me know your theories in the comments below. If you have your own local ghost stories, or have ever experienced something unexplainable on a trail, share that as well. And if you want to explore more of the world's most haunted and mysterious places, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next investigation. Stay safe out there. What you think about this story? Write in the comment your opinion. On my channel, you can watch other revenge or cheating stories. See you soon, my dear viewer.